People look at me like I'm crazy, I feel like sometimes, which I am, but that's besides the point because you can be both at the same time crazy and right occasionally. QUACKS news. Board game news. What's most interesting in the hobby? Why it might be the most interesting? And where do we go from here with it? The biggest stuff that's come across my radar so far, the what do you need to know, the why am I jabbering about it, and a few of my own opinions thrown in there along the way as always. Freaking subscribe, let's awesome go. Surprisingly or not surprisingly, a lot of this video is actually going to be new game announcements. A lot of new game announcements. And you know what? Let's stay with the big ones because Go On Board, just in the little ads, if you were paying close attention to the Gamefound page, announced that they got Tekken. Tekken! Especially if you read the Board Game Geek description at this point, it basically reads like a copy of Level 99's BattleCon, right? Because that's what BattleCon is! BattleCon is Street Fighter, Tekken, and Mortal Kombat thrown into one as a card-driven, don't need to Senjutsu swing and miss 3D element of things to keep it interesting. And you know what? Go On Board has, for all intents and purposes, done the exact same thing as Steamforged. Video game console IPs translated to the tabletop. One takes a lot of flack and one doesn't. Just interesting dichotomous here. And that's going to be the big question, right? Like, how do you make this stand out from BattleCon? Is it just BattleCon with minis? Senjutsu was a miss because it was a literal miss. It was hard to target and hit people, and the rules were not good and unintuitive, and explanations that didn't need to be as complicated as they did because you decided to create your own vocabulary rather than going with established ones in the first place. Sort of situation. Now, Go On Board, I mean, what are they known for, right? Like Steamforged, like I mentioned, takes a lot of flack because of their early gameplay ones with especially like Dark Souls, right? But truth be told, Go On Board is the, basically CMON equivalent on the video game IP side of things, if you will. If I will, right? Because what I'm going with that is there is a massive ton of exclusivity with them. Like reminiscent of the early CMON days. Now, maybe a little less of it as we're going along, but I don't know. You don't know. We're going to know in the near future with Tekken. So that has to be said. And again, like, as I mentioned, I see you, Peacope. I have a type. I have many types, but one of my types is head-to-head battling. BattleCon, freaking awesome. Exceed, freaking awesome. And speaking of Steamforged, though, they launched a Facebook group that's just entitled Tyrant, which I'm assuming is alluding to their next upcoming whatever game. No info, just random picture postings and snippets all over the Facebook group. I'm part of it, that's how I know about it. But you know what? I'm really just going to go on to ChatGPT one of these times and just say, this is the name of a board game. Please describe what you think it's about for me, and then I'll compare it to the Board Game Geek actual description, and we'll make a fun video out of it. No one steal that idea. It's a good freaking idea. Class of 89, Paverson Games. You may remember them from The Stilled and Luthier. It's going to give you, going back to everyone's favorite time. By the way, if this was your favorite time, that's a you problem. We're going back to the yearbook spread in high school, and it's your senior year, and you are president of the yearbook club, so you have to get all the moments captured. Say cheese, dude. Like Totally Strategic, ABC or Bust. No, those are literal me reading off the Board Game Geek page for descriptions because you have to get them in order for the ABC. You have to get tile placement, set collection, and proximity for the Totally Strategic. And say cheese, well, you have to get the most cringeworthy photos to make your yearbook blinged out like never before. And it's going to have, obviously, because it's a Paverson game, a heavier worker placement vibe. Retail had some absolutely massive announcements as well. If you missed it, or if you didn't miss it, we're going to recap it and make snarky comments about it. And that is, first up, Sanctuary, a family version of Ark Nova. Next up, at the end of the year, we will be having Ark Nova Duel. And this is more of a tile laying situation. Like, no, like hex-based tiles, more like Suburbia meets Ark Nova, if you will. You're getting 135 tiles. So you can already hear the complaining from the complainers in the complaining section right now. just like they complained about the complaints about the complainers in the Ark Nova deck of being too big and too random. So expect that to be the main criticism as you try to make the most successful zoological establishment with different effects on the tiles, helping you combo and achieve your very, very well-meaning conservation goals to increase the attraction of your zoo. It modifies and simplifies many of the mechanisms of the game in an elegant and surprising manner. Your goal is to best way to puzzle together your animals, buildings, and projects on your zoo map. That's an ongoing pleasure. I mean, if I can get Ark Nova played at an easier player count and with my kids and my wife, that's where it triumphs over everything. So that's why it's at the top of the list right now for the retail side of things. Secondarily, okay, I saved up all my snarky for this. CMYK is giving us, I'm sure you saw this one, the new aesthetically pleasing version of Quacks of Quedlinburg. And now, just like with Settlers of Catan, we are dumbing things down for the public because 4 syllables is not as digestible as 1. So we have to now go with just Quacks, meaning I have no appeal for it whatsoever, which means my copy of Quacks with the expansions is completely safe. I don't like it. I don't. I think it's unnecessary. We just talked about it the other week when I did my board game unpopular opinions, and I mentioned it there. This is something that nobody is clamoring for, a problem that is not needing to be fixed because it's actually not a problem. And I just look at this and I go, you know, part of me from a business model standpoint with this artwork, maybe you can get people, but the loss of realism in the photo is just not as appealing to me. And you know what? To each their own, right? I think that everybody likes a different aesthetic. I'm one of those people that loves Marvel United. I don't mind, but I'm kind of halvesies on the latest X-Men Dice Throne, if you will. Is it going to change my mind on the game? No, not whatsoever, right? I love Quacks. I don't see the need for this. You know, we'll go compliment sandwich here. I like the incorporation of some of the deluxeified things instead of these geek bits that the Board Game Geek store had to put out that everyone clamored for and that were sold out forever. So if you make those more widely available, like also, you know, my son, your sins are forgiven. But at the same time, I just don't know nowadays with these remakes because I can't tell from a consumer perspective how many of these are consumer-friendly decisions that are being made versus just ways to rebrand and get more money out of a same product in that regard. I just can't. It's splitting hairs, and I don't want to assume, you know, pessimistically, because I am the pessimist in our marriage as a whole, that this is the situation, but at the same time, it gives me that feeling, and I just can't help but feel that way as a pessimist in general. But I hope that people love it, and it brings more people to our hobby in general in the first place, like the switch from Settlers to Catan inevitably did. We're done there. Going back to that comment about Dice Throne, though, we'll use that as a slight segue, even though it didn't work whatsoever. Slam Throne. Yeah, April 1 was always an interesting day. I think actually people did things a little bit cleverer this year than they had in years past, or at least a little bit actually haha, not just ooh cringe. But Slam Throne is an actual thing from the makers of Dice Throne with Pogs. I see the concept. You've got the characters. Imagine like Pogs meets Too Many Bones. That's what it kind of looks like to me right now. And as someone with kids and someone who I think about this just from a pure logistical aspect, what am I going to be throwing those Pogs at? Meaning, what are they going to be on when I'm throwing them? How much are they going to bounce? Where are they going to ricochet? How loud is that going to be? Even regardless of if I think the mechanics are actually kind of neat and clever, I think about it like that because as an adult, as more so even a parent, those are the things that go into almost everything we buy our kids. My sister-in-law, for Christmas, got one of these party dance buzzer things where you hit it and it spouts random techno AI driven garbage for 30 seconds, unrelenting. And you go, well, that's not that bad, Chris. There's no volume control. It is one volume, and it is loud volume. And it's bad music. And the kids love it. And guess what? They don't do it when they're by themselves. They do it when they're in the middle of adults. So everything we buy has to pass the mustard test, if you will. I know that's a horrible analogy. That's why you tune into Legion games, though. You know what I'm saying. It has to pass the mustard. It has to pass the smell test. I combine them too, right? That's where I'm going with both of these. And I can't right now feel like that fully passes either of those tests for me. But again, I'm happy to be wrong. I am happy to be wrong. By the way, segue right here. I was just saving the QUACKS picture to my hard drive to be able to use to show you guys from just a minute ago. And I was going to type QUACKS new, but I missed the N and it typed QUACKS U. Not going to say it was a Freudian slip, but The other one that just either before or after this video on my top retails to watch out for, along with Sanctuary that we just mentioned, is a new one from Cranio Creations. It's a new Luciani game, Echoes of Time. You know I'm a big anything dealing with time style of things. I have That Time You Killed Me right behind this one as well. And so this is a 2 to 4 player, a fellowship of characters from different factions to conquer sources of power to control and modify the flow of time to outshine your opponents. A sliding quote-unquote system that guides you to manage the time needed for your cards to become usable while simultaneously controlling the activation rhythm of their effects. I think this has me all over it, which is why this is only secondary right now to basically Sanctuary on this list of retail games, which is saying something considering, again, like no mechanics known whatsoever in that regard. And probably third overall, only behind Fate of Fellowship as a Lord of the Ring pandemic style game in the larger picture of retail. So take that for what you will, but gosh knows I'm going to be following close to get more details on this one between now and whenever the freaking deuce, I think maybe Essen, they said, gets live on the pre-order as well as the buy me now phase of things. And Vladimir Suchy and Underwater Cities, well, we're returning to that in the form of Data Era, a second big expansion for this. And it's going to give you, well, combination with the first expansion, New Discoveries. So new resource type, data disks and data centers and information cities. New upgraded components. And they can be used with the base game and the New Discoveries expansion. So more like Spirit Island Nature Incarnate, where you kind of need to have Jagged Earth to get the full experience of it, it sounds like, especially if you want the deluxeified components. So I don't know. Does that interest you? I guess it's going to interest some people. And you know what? Underwater Cities is probably one of the more underrated games as a whole. If I told you that was in the top 50 overall on Board Game Geek, I'm guessing that you wouldn't have thought it was that high. So take that for what you will as well. Now, there was an anniversary edition of this, but apparently that wasn't enough as one of the best bag building games of all time. Capstone is giving us an Orleans big box version that will be available sometime in October, which again, you know, how is this different than the 10th anniversary edition from DLP Games that was just last year in 2024? And back then it had everything released to date and 3 new play styles, including dice. This is also a complete collection, but it's a limited print run. And don't worry, oh gosh, you got to read the wording on this, folks, every time. Capstone members will have 20% off. 20% off. 20% off. MSRP! Which kind of makes you go, well, don't most big board game stores online basically do almost 20% MSRP for get-go? And then if you're going to pay for something like this, which is $220, all of those other ones are going to give you free shipping as well. Just saying, right? But it's giving you everything: the Plague expansion, Trade Intrigue, Invasion, and custom inlay premium player boards, all upgraded things, the 3 new play styles. So if anything, this is just a re-implementation of that anniversary box, it sounds like, more than anything else, to a wider scale. So if you wanted Orleans in a coffin, there you go. Another time traveling game caught my eye. You may not have heard of this one though. Shifters. And this is your team traveling through time and space. Alonzi! Geronimo! Bow ties are cool. Anyway, but this just has a little bit of a different vibe as a cooperative scenario-based game. 2 players, though. 2 players. Or solo. Okay. Campaign, scenarios. You arrive on a new planet. You send your team to fight against local opponents, having to adapt to their can't even say this with a straight face. Particularities! No, seriously, that's what the Board Game Geek description says. You might fail, but a die and retry mechanism allows you to start over and over again, becoming stronger until you succeed. Roguelite style. Shift mechanism that will give timing a very important triggering of your card effects when you want it or when you need it. And then when it arrives at the end of the line, it will trigger special effects as well. I just did that sort of thing with City of Games and their Emberleaf situation. So that mechanic is being adopted by a lot more people now, it sounds like, as well, because this is at least the second one in a short string of games I've seen already in the last month or two that are using something similar. So, I mean, the only thing I can think of is this is going to be a Kumbaya style game of 1 versus 2 and rather just really a solo game that masquerades as a 2-player game. I hope not. And that's why it's probably not going to get on my list right now, but I thought I'd at least mention it because I know you solo junkies are watching. Speaking of designers that we know and have been talking about, Vlaada is giving us something completely out of nowhere. It's called Severton. You're joining a group of meddling kids in order to reveal secrets of a hidden spooky town. No, sorry, Scooby-Doo crossover there. A shadowy old neighborhood called Severton, cooperative style, in the Rapid Arrows scheme of things, which is a Czech comic book and novel series set in the 1930s in Old Prague. And you actually are a group of friends trying to uncover the secrets of this neighborhood that's ruled by a ruthless group of Vants, whatever those are. Challenges, movements, avoid the patrols, get yourself out of trouble, or use your fists. No idea. No idea. But in Vlaada, we trust, so there you go. You may remember Itten, right? Itten from the fame of Moonbase, which Shut Up and Sit Down really loved. Tokyo Highway, where an actual dexterous, you're making a highway with cars on it. Crash Octopus, where you kind of throw stuff down and gather. That group is giving us now a game called Hits and Outs, where it's a 2-player head-to-head bluff, and you have to guess which of the first base, second base, home has the item that you're looking for underneath it. And depending on how well you guess, that determines whether you get out or whether you get that as a hit. And you subsequently go back and forth with the bluffing meta style of things. If you can guess correctly where the pitcher has or has not put in the baseball token, and most runs at the end of the game wins. It's clever, it's head to head, it's a little bit of bluffing dynamics deduction. So, right? Itten, hitting it out of the park. Woohoo! He went with the pun, right? And then going on to a few expansions, because what would it be without expansions? Galactic Cruise is coming back to us already on the heels of just being delivered and reviewed by all of the people with the better opinions. It's coming back with an achievements expansion, which is interesting because they already had 2 expansions to go with the base game as a whole. So we're getting more of it. Now, from what comments I've read, the expansions don't make it like bigger, longer, but they incorporate into. So people are relatively happy with that. But this one is going to give you more rules for Zoe Meeple and incorporating her into your game, it says. I don't know what that is. But the bulk of the expansion is 12 boxes of locked content, each accumulating and accomplishing as the players do so to give more unlocks and more things for everybody. But you get to etch your name into it. And some are new familiar, some are brand new. How do you feel about that? Do you need more of that? So what else is really interesting from a news standpoint? Well, are you interested in more of one of the best games of 2024? More Arks? Yes, more Arks. Now, there's nothing officially announced, but astute, well, people who have a lot of time on their hands, I guess, or really want a job in the board game industry, were stalking over on Leader Games' website, and they found a link to a 2025 summer internship apply now opportunity, which had in the details, quote, "This summer we will be finishing the expansion for Hoth." Okay. Working on a secret project. Okay. We don't care about secret projects. And beginning work on new content for Arks. Okay, I mean, there you go, right? Is it going to be more that way? Now, this was actually towards the middle of March, so nearly a month ago at the time of me filming this, but I didn't see anyone talking about this when this was over on the forum, so I thought I'd highlight it at least from that aspect of things. Then, do you care about a 20-year-old game? Memoir 44 from Days of Wonder, the historical-driven board game of a war scenario system, historic battles from World War II. And, well, this is a two-player accommodating team play style of scenario-driven multiple boards, scale operations, and military chain of command. And that sounds all rather dry and drab. However, if I slap a Star Wars theme on it, is that going to change your mind? Well, we had to update it because between the time I filmed it and the time I actually aired this, well, Days of Wonder came out and they officially said, yeah, rumors true. Battle of Hoth, Memoir 44 on a Star Wars IP. We're just slapping it on there and calling it good and milking in the money. And the question is, of course, to go along with this, the first question out of people's mouths and minds was not how good is this going to be? It's, hey, just like we saw with this one, right? Fellowship of the Ring, right? It's sometimes what you're saying and it's sometimes what you're not saying. This is Battle of Hoth. So inevitably, invariably, indubitably, we will have other battles. Battle of Endor, Battle of Coruscant, whatever you want. The real question, though, is are you going to see stuff that's apart from the main trilogy? I would love to see some EU stuff, right? Extended universe. As well as just screw that, make it the Legends stuff. Give me freaking awesome stuff. Give me a Thrawn situation. Give me something actually good outside of the original trilogy. I would love it. Because that's the other thing that the Memoir 44 people were joking about all over the place, is that how many iterations of that have spawned from Days of Wonder. And so, truth be told, how many are we going to see from Star Wars? Either way, it's freaking on my wish list because it looks freaking amazing, right? As someone who isn't typically doing this. And then also, officially, the Great Library is over on Board Game Geek from Eagle Griffin as the next Lacerda. And you're getting all of the knowledge of the world in one face. In the 3rd century BC, Ptolemy of the Pharaoh of Egypt is envisioning the creation of the Great Library of Alexandria. And you're basically librarians. Hey, you want to go play a board game? What are you doing in the board game? Well, you know, the concept is that you're going back to ancient Egypt and, oh, that sounds interesting. Are we fighting mummies? Are we enacting the movie The Mummy or The Scorpion King with The Rock? Actually... we're librarians. But don't worry, we get to resource management and play this for 3 to 4 hours. I'm sorry. I know it's going to be fantastic and crunchy and excellent and all those other ubiquitous, generic, heavy Euro-style games that go with Lacerdas. But just hearing that on surface value, you kind of got to crack a smile because can you just imagine describing that to someone who isn't in the board game hobby in the first place? So we'll see more information than this comes out. It's basically, you know, playtesting right now, so there's absolutely no information on it whatsoever. The interesting thing, though, that they do say on the Board Game Geek forums is that there's no time frame, obviously, but that they have 2 to 3 other campaigns before the Great Library. One of those, at least per review of the forums and the linked games on Board Game Geek, is the next Age of Steam Deluxe expansions. The other one, well, we'll just have to wait and see. Then, one other thing that caught my eye, Pandasaurus just released a little bit of a teaser as well via email, and they said, here's a few code names for our upcoming games. See what you think about with a generic description as well as a few images. I hate pulling this up in the middle of a news video, but by far and away the easiest way to do it for me to show you exactly what we're looking at. Howl and Harmony, cooperative, working together, card-driven strategy from the makers of the Wolves. Snappy turns and addictive replayability. Okay. Four-suited something trick style situation potentially. Ghost Inc. The cards may be blank, but the stakes are real in another trick-taking game. Write the rules as you go, literally. Okay, I'll pass on that one, dealing 7 cards in dry erase markers. Green Light, though. More 2-player games. Elegant dueling influences everything. All eyes are on the man across the bay. Charm outmaneuver and dance your opponent out of the spotlight. Okay, interesting, intriguing. 2 different pattern set matchups there on either side. Dynamic tracker in the middle that you're going to be moving across. Well, with the rise of the 2-player dueling situations, that looks intriguing. Then we have Pampas, and this is South American plains, building herds, buying lands, and racing to the market. So, streamlined edition of a classic game, which, again, I probably should be familiar with, but I'm not. And then the last one here, Dream Engine. You're building a beloved classic and getting a respin of it where you're rolling dice, collecting hearts, and chasing combo-driven engine-building situations. Again, I'd probably say the most interesting is the dual player version 1 right here, followed maybe by Howl and Harmony. In an upcoming recent announcement from La Boîte de Jeux really has me a little bit intrigued. Moonlight, the Land of the Wolves. Leading your pack of wolves by cleverly placed cards in a very limited aspect area control game. 2-player only of manipulations over 2 rounds. You either place a card in an empty spot orthogonal to an already placed card, or you cover an opponent's card already with a consecutive higher value than is what in play. But there are going to be varying characteristics of these cards: value, the phase of the moon, the counting power, the majority power, to manipulate rather than just have a straight numerical situation of playing just a simpler higher number. You compare the values of each pack for each line, winning points as the number of wolves involved for the majority of the moons, and then between rounds, you get to play catch-up. Winner gets an extra wolf, loser gets an extra power card, which changes the dynamic of the game. I think this looks absolutely fantastic as a card-driven, very, very tight game, because the other aspect that I mentioned is it's either a 4x3 or a 3x4. So fitting that in and having those dynamics, if you give me enough additional wolves to interlock and interwove in between rounds, as well as a mixed match of powers that can create a huge dynamic going on there, this one could easily stand up to some of the other 2-player card-driven games we've seen. Then we'll end this with a little bit of the hotness. What's on the hotness? Well, we've already covered a bunch of the stuff. The great libraries on the hotness. Vantage from Stonemaier, getting close to release later this summer, drumming up the hype in the 7th continent, lands of Galzir style, unsettled vibe, if you will. And there's actually a really good breakdown over on the forums on Board Game Geek if you're interested in how this compares to those aspects and why it's really just a one-off scenario generator repeated in the, well, comparison to the video game side of things, Legends of the Wild, allowing you to do the open world situation in the first place. SETI's still trending, Battle of Hoth, like we nailed it. And then this War of Mine, which is concurrently funding over on Gamefound from Awakened Realms and rolling in the monies for the 2nd edition, because this War of Mine needs miniatures. Gazebo, also funding from Bitewing over on Kickstarter. Deep Regrets is the hot thing that I'm going to be talking about tomorrow, only in the form of Shallow Regrets. Both of them should be your Kickstarter fears. And then Galactic Cruise, we mentioned it's on the hotness on the receiving end of things. Ark, then Carry On, which is also funding at the time of me filming this. And the only one that you probably haven't heard of recently is another one called Leaders, which is sort of an asymmetric war chest light, if you're familiar with your playing the cards down, only having different asymmetric abilities to take out your opponent before they take out you. That's the hotness, that's the news, and because this is at the very end of April, we'll have one in the beginning of May, because this one should have been out earlier than it was. Hit me up on Patreon. We'll see where the YouTube membership thing goes. I'm trying to decide how to do that. And then subscribe. You know what? Have a great day. Peace out. See you around.